Thank you very much, Unuka. Thank you very much, Tunapuna. Tonight I recognize once again the lady who never misses a meeting. Follow her and you end up in a PNM meeting. Mrs. Joan Yule Williams, HR. Executive members of the People's National Movement, my cabinet colleagues, my parliamentary colleagues, all. But most importantly tonight, I want to salute our standard bearers from Tunapuna, Piako, and the Rima. Because you are going out there to carry the message of the PNM and the hope of Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, visitors, all, our country is not perfect. Our individual bodies are not perfect. But if you have a toothache, real toothache, and you have a good friend, or even a concerned citizen in your presence, and they're rushing you to the doctor, to treatment, and then you got to the point, and you turn up at the cardiologist, and they say, I'll bring you. He will fix you. Even with the toothache, you have to ask, what kind of fool is this? You don't go to a cardiologist for a toothache. And if you have a fracture, having fallen, and they take you to the eye specialist, no matter how qualified the eye specialist is in eyes, you need somebody to deal with the fractured arm and to put it in a cast. So all these people who are out there making a lot of noise and confusing this country, and talking about what they're going to do on the 14th, and what they're going to do, and why they're going to do it. I want to remind them all that this is the local government election. And if you have nothing to contribute to local government and its discourse, stop fooling people that you're going to move government after August 14th. It doesn't matter what happened on August 14th. The government of Trinidad and Tobago on the 15th is the People's National Movement. And you see, it is not by accident that they're all focusing on the national issues which they think are national concerns that they could stir up some support over. You know why? Because the People's National Movement government of Trinidad and Tobago is satisfying the needs of the wider population of Trinidad and Tobago. Here it is. We are dealing in this short season with the issue of local government, and I'll come back to that in a little while. But you know, they would have easily been talking about the economy. Remember how many years, how many months, all they were saying, it collapsed, it collapsed. All they could have said about our economy, difficult as it is, even as we were struggling to pay public servants, even as the economy had shut right down, there was a time in this country, in the not too distant past, when the only part of the country that was operating was the energy sector, because as a result of COVID, we had to shut everything down. And as for prices, prices came right down. Oil price came down to zero on one day. It was minus $2. People who were handling oil were paying people to take oil out of their storage at $2 per barrel. That was our time. And in that scenario, what were they saying? That it collapsed. The economy collapsed. For months, we had to find money to pay the business owners to keep their workers getting an income. We kept all our public servants on the payroll, every teacher, every gazetted public servant, and we paid for food to come into your house when you didn't have money to buy it. This government did that. And all they could have said is that ahead of us was collapse. We borrowed $13 billion to be able to do that. And they said, public debt, we're in the debt trap, and the country is going to go to hell. Ladies and gentlemen, we, this PNM government, in the most difficult of times, we had faith in our country, we had faith in our people. Even when the overdraft reached 98%, we had faith that we were taking the best option available. And ladies and gentlemen, this election is taking place, and they can't come out and talk about the economy because we have made significant progress. Notwithstanding their bad mouthing and the truckload of negatives, spit and bile, today our economy is better than it was when we entered the period in 2021. And against that background, you would see the largest union, I think, is the PSA now. Public servants going to the Privy Council. The government has offered them 4% for the years that have passed in great difficulty. When our revenues fell from 60 billion down to 43 and lower, we offered 40% immediately and said, let us begin to negotiate the next 3 years and get on that term, because as we improve our economy, we are expecting and hoping to be in a better position to give public servants a better offer for the next triennium. The local judge say, no. Next judge, appeal court, you lost. You want to go by the Englishman because you're hoping the Englishman will tell us what to do here in Trinidad and Tobago. Let me say something to all public servants tonight. Observe that notwithstanding the low offer, what the country could afford and still remain in an even keel, all those who are demanding more and more from less and less, public servants, if a government comes into office, offer and give you more than the country could afford, the only way that could be managed is to cut employment in the public service. That's the only way. It's the only way. But this government from day one said that we are not, as they were predicting, that we'll end up at the IMF. Many of them who are outside now looking to vote, they were telling you that we are going to end up at the IMF. And we'll have IMF prescriptions in Trinidad and Tobago with IMF telling us what to do. We said no. We have faith in ourselves, in our country, in our economy, and in our ability in the world. And we will make our own prescriptions and apply them, even though in instances they might not be as palatable as they should be. But the bottom line is, it will be in the best interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And we've done that. We've done that. And only this week, contrary to what they were predicting when they were predicting their collapse, some of them can't even pronounce the word collapse, collapse, collapse. When they were predicting collapse, this week, coming from a negative outlook, from the most difficult of days, Moody's has said that Trinidad and Tobago is going in the right direction. Our outlook is positive, and we can look forward to a downgrade, to an upgrade. To an upgrade, we can look forward to an upgrade. And that is why, since they are campaigning for a general election, you're not seeing any of them raising the economy and its rating as an issue, because there's no negative there for them to beat. Our economy is doing better than most. Better than most. And of course, finance. I told you how much we borrowed, where the overdraft was at 90-odd%. We have handled the economy in a particular way, and we have now brought the overdraft down to under 50%, giving the government some borrowing room. And we have got revenues a little more than we anticipated. I tell you what, it didn't happen by accident. It didn't happen by accident. When I called the country to order at the Hyatt Hotel and said, this government will go and talk to the oil companies and say to them that your shareholders cannot be having increased profits while our shareholders facing destitution. They said, oh, we're interfering with contracts and we'll chase away foreign investment, and it's bad for the country. As a result of those discussions that I have led, talking to oil companies, the biggest part of our economy and our earnings, today we are earning billions more that we would not have had under the same contracts. Under the same contracts. You heard Minister Al-Rawi just told you about more money being allocated to local government. Where did more money came from? We're producing less oil and less gas. But more money was available because the earning formula was changed as a result of this government's intervention. And the people who had nothing to say about that. But let me remind you all, when I came into office as Prime Minister, within 2 weeks, BP came to me to tell me and to show me what the UNC had done or what they have given BP. And there was no taxes to be had until 2024. You remember that? That was 2015. And BP was telling me there are no taxes to be had, the largest gas producer in the country. And I said to BP, not on your Nelly. We are going to change that because the people of Trinidad and Tobago have an interest in that business. And we've changed it. And that is how our earnings have improved considerably, even as our volumes have gone down and the market is difficult. But they have a lot to say about the PNM. They can't engage us on the fact that we had a check to pay $850 million US. August 2018, we couldn't pay it. We took action to ensure that the country wasn't bankrupted. And as a result of that, today we have 2 profitable companies and the refinery that is closed down because we don't have any oil to refine in there. But they were saying, leave it so. It was bad for politics, but we know it was better for the country. Today, Heritage is making billions. You all remember the night when I offered Petrotrin workers an employee stock ownership in the Heritage company that was just formed? What percentage would the government have given them? 10%? 20%? 25%? 30%? I don't know. But the government was prepared to give the employees. They were led away by other leaders. Today, Heritage is making $1 billion profit a year. Suppose those workers were encouraged to take 10, 15, 20% of that per year. And those are the leaders who are still out there bad-mouthing the PNM. Para is making $270 million profit per year supplying the fuel. So even though we're not producing the fuel at a refinery, in handling the fuel, that you never were short of a profit. So you move from bankruptcy facing you to service $850 million US, which Heritage is doing. And as a result of the Minister of Finance not being able to do that and steering the country away from that, we could do other things. They bad talking the PNM. And of course, education. There were some people when we said we'll reopen schools after COVID, they didn't want school to reopen. Exams to be had. We as government taking blows from people saying the exams should not take place. Last week, the Minister of Health Education could announce our children did their exams and they did far better than last year and they keep on doing better. Going in the right direction. The public service from that difficult period that all of us experienced, life and death, not a single gazetted public servant in this country lost his or her job. And more than that, there was never a month end when they were not paid and paid on time. But you're listening to people bad-mouthing the PNM. People who never manage a foul coup, never manage a parlor, can't manage their own life, disgraceful in their own conduct, offering themselves to run the country, and you telling me about you going to vote for them because you're tired of the PNM? This PNM is what stood between you and disaster and now stand between you and them. That's what it is. When the head of the World Health Organization come into this country in person and say that this country handled the pandemic well because the government did well, it wouldn't sit well with them. Because as far as they're concerned, we were working with the doctors and nurses, they were carrying us to the courthouse. 65 times. lying that people were dying in the hospital and doctors were hiding the bodies. Run out front when the first person died from COVID, even before the family could have been told. They're so glad to report COVID death. It was the opposition leader that told this country that somebody had died from COVID. They want to be out front, carrying bad news, the tongue crier that they are. But we stood up, fought the virus, managed our country, managed disdain, managed undermining, and at the end of it all, we are one of those countries that came out better than many. Our national airline, for a long period of time, the country was closed, no transportation. We held our national airline together. The day the border was opened, Carl was able to start flying and has gone on to continue to provide us with the National Air Service. What was the story? What would they have done differently? They would have continued to thief public money, give their friends hundreds of millions of dollars, and there's a cohort of people in this country who are very convenient. They want to know how much you spend on a CARICOM meeting, but they have no interest in wanting to know why SIS left this country on election day when the results were known and never came back. $1 billion rotting down in sea lots right now. $1 billion of a contract awarded when another company that was pre-qualified and was $400 million less didn't get the contract under the Kamla Prasad Bisasa government. They gave it to SIS and they know what they had done. So as soon as they lost the election, the next day SIS left this country and never looked back. Understand? We built the Crep overpass for $219 million. After we canceled the arrangement, it was going to be built for $500 million. Nobody wants to know. None of them want to know who was getting the extra $300 million. They didn't want to know that, but coming to ask now how much it cost. So ladies and gentlemen, agriculture. Last week we had something happen in this country as part of our agricultural program. As a result of the combination of Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago working together, not talking together, working together to initiate increased activity and rejuvenation of the agricultural sector in Trinidad and to expand it in Guyana. 200,000 pounds? 200,000 pounds of rice came into this country. It's not rice to eat. That was rice to plant. Rice seeds, where we are restarting the rice industry in this country in a serious way. 3,000 acres. 3,000 acres. The seeds came in last week, and the very day it came in, the opposition leader woke up from the night before and asking, what has CARICOM done about our food supplies? You all remember, we had the CARICOM initiative on food supply security in Guyana, and I went to Guyana, traveled all the way down to Roraima on the Brazilian border, hands-on with my colleague, President of Guyana, and we took decisions there and we are acting on those decisions. When it was Trinidad's turn the following year, to keep the momentum going, we had our expo here to revitalize our farmers here and introduce this new initiative and this new energy into agriculture. The opposition absolutely wanted no part of it. As a matter of fact, one of their councillors came to the opening. He was ostracized and is today no longer in the UNC. This is a document that I hold up to the media. And I want to ask the media, it is useful if you read this and carry some of it, even in summary, to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So when they hear the opposition leader or anybody else trying to mislead you that all fall down in your country on the context of food supply, from crisis to opportunity, an innovative approach to food security in the Caribbean region, February 2023. This is the documentation of what we are doing, Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana, arising out of the CARICOM. Arising out of the CARICOM initiative. So when the opposition leader have nothing to talk, when she get up and she blink 3-4 times and asking about CARICOM, what is CARICOM doing? This is what CARICOM is involved in right now. The Minister of Youth Development in Trinidad and his colleague in Guyana, we have thousands of young people who are currently engaged in a number of agricultural initiatives, creating new farmers out of people who were not farmers in Trinidad and Tobago. One of the biggest opposition coming from the UNC is the program that we have in here and in Trinidad, where we are training young people, some of them from the East-West corridor, some from Central, some from South, to become farmers. They're getting the training and they are given land to go on with government support. The opposition is opposing that. As I speak to you now, today I receive a report on what is happening with the Shade House project in Chagaramas, where another batch of young people are being trained to produce agricultural food under controlled conditions, again with the support of the government of Guyana. And you're getting them to ask, what is happening? If you don't know what is happening, go back to bed, drink your rum and go back to bed. You see, when we came into office, the vast majority of the Point Lisa's contracts for those companies in Point Lisa's had come to the end of their life, 25 years, 20-year contracts. The UNC did not negotiate a single contract renewal, not one. Many of those billion-dollar companies were on month-to-month arrangements. We don't believe that. It took this government appointing Stuart Young as Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister and as Minister of Energy. I can tell you today, we have renegotiated every single one of those contracts. Every one. And more than that, because of their misbehavior in the sector, some companies had claims against the state to the tune of $2.5 billion. We have negotiated away all of that, less about 500 million. Right? The one contract that they did was the CGCL plant down in Labrie. You know what that contract said? That in an environment of shortage of gas, that new company will get the gas. And at a price that is lower than NGC is paying. In other words, you will subsidize a foreign company. It had a small shareholding by NGC and by Neil and Massey. But the rest of it, foreign. And you will give them gas at a lower price than you contracted to pay BP and Shell. That was them. And as a result of having done that, it triggered a clause in the other contracts at Point Lisa's where you're now liable for gas that they're not getting. And that's how the debt was run up. As I talk to you now, we are negotiating with the Chinese who have us over arbitration. $300 million they're claiming because the UNC shut down the aluminum project and walk away. And you know, while all this is on our back as a people, the very people who are responsible for that are coming in front of you, the same people, and saying, elect me because I am your salvation, I am your savior. As if you have calabash gut in your head and you forget them. You forgot what they've done in this country. So there's an election now and they're sure they're going to win. Well, the only thing they're sure of is that you're stupid. That's the only thing they're sure of. And they're waiting until the 14th, the night of the 14th of December, right? To determine that it is so. People of Trinidad and Tobago, you don't need anybody to come and tell you where you've been or who is acting in your interests. You don't need that. You know, I'm hearing them now. We have held our position. All of these areas, whether it's education, whether it's health, whether it's energy, we have held our areas, our interests, and the people's interests have prevailed, and those are not areas that they could campaign on now. And the issue in front of us now is local government. It's not that today's issue. This is something that we've worked on for years. There was a time, and even now, there are people saying that the PNM has no interest in local government reform because the PNM is a government that like to hold on to central power, and the PNM is a what do you call it? Doctor politics, all kind of nonsense. But the bottom line was that we of the PNM will not bring about local government reform. That's what I was saying while we were preparing, consulting, drawing up programs. You heard tonight about the management system that have to go into local government if you are going to make any significant changes. You heard about the kind of impact it will have. No, they want no part of it. Tonight I saw the little one from Sawa being interviewed. You think by growing here in your chin, you could look intellectual and telling the country what should happen to solve the country's problems is that the government and the opposition need to work to get together. That sounds good, eh? But the government and the opposition are required to work together. That's a requirement of our governance system. And that working together is in the parliament. It's not in the rum shop or in your political party head office. Balize House is for the PNM. The other places where there's go on top shop, below shop, on top brothel, that is for them. But in the parliament, we are required to work together. So when we eventually, after the years of work on local government, Hazel Manning, Frankie Khan, Ken Valley, these are all ministers who worked on the whole concept of advancing local government to a point where it reached the parliament in a bill called the Miscellaneous Provisions Local Government Reform Bill 2020. So we know in the parliament, it's in Joint Select Committee, it's now come back to the parliament floor for the people's representatives to take a decision. That is when government and opposition are supposed to work together. And here we go. Absent. Kamla Prasad Bisesa, Rushton Parry, Rai Ragbir, Barry Padarat, Michelle Benjamin, Saddam Hussein, and Anol Ram. They couldn't be bothered to be in the parliament to take the vote as to whether local government reform, the bill that has gone through all those changes, ready for the people's representative to take a vote. So in 2023, we can now move forward with local government reform. They couldn't be bothered to even be in the parliament. So that is 7 of them accounted for. I have 12 more. Of the 12 more, David Lee, Rodney Charles, Khadija Amin, Rujanath Indar Singh, Rudal Munilal, Dinesh Rambali, Lakram Bodo, Vandana Mohit, Devanan Tanku, Anita Haynes, Ravi Ratiram, and Dr. Richard Sicharan. Abstain. 12 of them. Local government reform arrived at the point now where the people's representative will decide, do we leave it so, or do we make changes for the future and for the better? The 19 of them, not a single vote for local government. On that fateful day, 2 of our members were out of the country. One, Minister of Education, Gatsby Dolly, and the other one, Stuart Young, on government business. Thankfully, you gave us 22 seats. So when 2 were out of the country, 20 were in the parliament. And the 20 of them voted for local government reform. That is why, now the bill has passed. The country has been moved with the authority of the parliament, with PNM saying that we have boundless faith in our destiny. We have confidence in the people of this country. We believe that the people in the various corporations, the various boroughs, the various cities could look after their affairs and do better under the arrangements of local government reform. So the issue in this election, as it was on this day in the parliament, the 23rd of May, 2022. On that day, the vote was taken. The UNC voted against local government. The PNM voted for local government. Tonight I'm inviting the country. You have no vote inside the parliament. They had one. That's how they used it. 12 abstentions and 7 absentees, including the leader. You have a vote on August 14th. This same vote is coming to you on August 14th. Do you vote against local government? Do you abstain? Or do you vote for local government reform? That is the issue in this election. That is the issue. It is a singular issue. They want to move the government. Wait until the general election is called. The battle will be joined and the PNM will be there mano a mano with you. But this time, it's local government take a position on August 14th. You see, we, contrary to what they were saying, we accept that we'll be better off by decentralizing a significant amount of authority from central government in Port of Spain to government at the local district to look after you at your doorstep and the issues that confront you out there. They're saying, no, leave it so. No, leave it so. So leave it so. And then what you get more of the Penal Debe Corporation telling you that they can do nothing in Penal Debe because they don't have diesel to put in the trucks and the equipment to go out and service you. So you can hear more from Sandy Gandhi that they can't cut the grass in the playing field. Leave it so. The PNM is saying, no, we can do better than that. We can bring you service under your control. We can have management that does not have the CEO doing what the chairman of Siparia said, which is running the corporation while nobody elected them. You elect local government people, they're going to be an executive with the authority to run your affairs. That is local government reform. So you see, you vote for it if you believe in it, if you believe in yourselves. Or you can follow these people whose record is one that you should stay very far from. Very far. So they don't have anything useful to campaign on. So what do? They cannot engage this PNM on any of the sectors that we're on. So they now resort to lies. Have you all seen the Express on Wednesday, the 12th of July? There's an advertisement at the bottom. It says paid advertisement, right? The first time I heard about an inheritance tax, I heard it from Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa. Not a single person in government, in a radio program, in a TV program, in a column, in an article, in a joke, ever mentioned that. That was never an issue in this country. But they want something to incite people, to make you feel as though you're going to lose something, and therefore Kamla Prasad Bisesa fabricate this monstrous lie that this government is contemplating and is planning to impose an inheritance tax. So when you pass your house or your piece of land to your child or your grandchild, the government will charge them 25% of the value of the land. The UNC sat down in their office and concocted that lie, plain and simple so. Immediately, the Minister of Finance, who is this country's authority on taxes and finance and revenue, came out and said, it is not true. The government has never discussed that. It is not government policy. It forms no part of the program of the PNM. You think they would stop there? Because they have invested in this lie and it is meant to incite the people, they go and pay and put an ad in the newspaper on the lie that they have created, telling them they are bringing 25% inheritance tax. Well, in Parliament, I would have had to say, Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa, you're speaking terminological inexactitudes. You are talking untruths. But in Tunapuna, on this platform, I could say, Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa, you lie. You see, we can stand on our record in any area of governmental activity. What was most important to this country, to me as Prime Minister, I told you about my encounter with BP 2 weeks after I became Prime Minister. And I saw the danger to this country and I took action. I also saw where we in this country, we have plant and equipment in Point Lisas that could handle 4.1 billion cubic feet of gas per day. When we came into office, we were just doing about 3.1 billion, a billion cubic feet less because the gas wasn't available. Our older gas fields, 25 years we're pumping, no new gas is being made. As you're pumping, there's less and less and lower pressure, so your production is less and less. I saw the threat of that. That was 2015, September. As of today, we are now pumping about 2.8 billion with a capacity of 4.1 billion, so I knew we have to find gas. So while we're looking within our border, I look also outside the border. And outside the border, it is the government that acts out there. Inside here, many of you are officers and technicians and engineers, and so you would have what we have in here. But if you're going to look outside, where there's gas next door or even on our border, shared with Venezuela, it's the government that has to deal with that. And the Prime Minister led that charge. I moved immediately to Venezuela to talk about a gas supply for Trinidad and Tobago. When we were to sign the agreement, an agreement which was being signed for the first time in the history of Venezuela, signing an agreement to export its gas to anybody, on this occasion to Trinidad and Tobago, I took a car plane and took a whole media corps to Caracas for that monumental occasion. You know what the local press carried out when you came back? In 2 lines, they mentioned that we signed the agreement. But the biggest picture, the biggest arrangement, is that I was dancing with Maduro, who brought some Better Village type people. And they start to attack. They start to attack the Dragon Dan, the Dragon Field, the Dragon Ding. And if you hear them, you wouldn't think that our very future, that Dragon Field that we want to get our hands on, is 17 kilometers from our nearest platform. You would think that the people of this country will rally with the government and say, yes, Venezuela, we can use that. When the US put sanctions on Venezuela and stopped us in our tracks in 2018, some of them celebrated. As a matter of fact, inside of Venezuela, there was difficulty with Venezuela's internal politics. It's not our doing. But the US decided that they will pick a president for Venezuela, and that president is President Guaido. The Trinidad and Tobago opposition undermined every action of the government of Trinidad and Tobago supporting President Guaido. They went as far as to lie on Paria and say Paria is breaking sanction by bringing fuel and sending it to Venezuela. You remember that? They wrote the US Embassy asking the US Embassy to put sanction on Rowley and Stuart Young. You remember that? I am in America doing my medical. I'm home in my cousin's house in California. I see in Trinidad information on social media where I am under US authorities talking to the US because I am laundering money in America. That is the kind of story that the UNC put out there. And of course, they did everything possible to damage the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago and the United States. I can tell you they failed. And they have failed miserably. Last week, the largest delegation that left America this year to go anywhere came to Trinidad and Tobago. Led by the Secretary of State and a bipartisan group, which also had, in this congressional group, the minority leader in the House, came to Trinidad and Tobago to join us in celebration of the 50th anniversary of CARICOM. I could tell you, when I became Prime Minister, at my first meeting in Guyana, I looked at the agenda. Knowing that the Caribbean market is so important to Trinidad and Tobago, my eyes went straight to the agenda to see what is going to be there with respect to Caribbean markets and marketing. And I realized that the single market and economy was not on the agenda. I immediately inquired, why is that so? And they said at the last meeting, a decision was taken to remove the CSME from the CARICOM agenda. I said, how could Trinidad and Tobago agree to that? They said, well, Trinidad and Tobago was not here, so the decision was taken in the absence of Trinidad and Tobago. When I checked and inquired, you know what happened? That very day when that happened in Guyana, the UNC under Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa was in Tobago at the Cocoa Reef Hotel drinking and falling down. Would you believe that? Would you believe that? I then had to go and take steps to put that back on the agenda. How could we not have efforts being made to protect and to grow the single market and economy? Every factory in Trinidad, every job in every factory is dependent on our largest market, which is CARICOM for manufactured goods. And these people are still around, washing them out on the PNM. We got it back on the agenda, and Trinidad and Tobago took leadership of it. We brought CARICOM to the Hilton Hotel for 2 days to work on what eventually became the St. Anne's Accord, where every CARICOM country signed on to the progress of the CSME. Last week, we met here in Trinidad, and CARICOM took a decision for free movement of people throughout the CARICOM. I'm putting you on notice now. It's only a matter of time before the UNC begin to object to that. I'm putting you on notice now. Because they've said it very clearly. They will support nothing that the government does. Nothing. Tim Gopi Singh is on record. Go and check the record and see how many times he is speaking for the UNC and others saying they will support nothing, and that has been their habit. Look, they love crime. They love crime. So anything that the government try to do that may have the effect of ameliorating or eliminating the effects of criminals in our society, they're opposing it where they could oppose it. When the anti-gang bill was in the parliament, the PNM was so effective in the committee on helping them to pass the law. Check the Hansard and you'll see Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa saying thanks to Marlene MacDonald and Colin Imbot for the input that they made in that committee. But of course, by the time it came to a vote, when they were out of office, they will not vote for anti-gang. And they voted down the bill because it requires special majority. They voted it down. It was when there was a public outcry against what they had done that they came and asked the government to waive the standing order and bring the bill back to the parliament for them to vote for it. And for them to vote for it, we had to take out all the teeth. So it's the gum that left there. And if you hear them now, as they count every murder, every criminal outrage, they're excited about it to mention it. And they want me to spend all my time dealing with that. Well, we have people in the government dealing with that. And the government's response to crime and criminality on the street and near your home, it has to be done through our security services. I can't take up the phone and even call the commissioner of police and say, do this or do that. You know why? That is interference. Because the commissioner of police is independent. That's what it is. Hold me responsible. But the plan is, hold the government responsible, but give the government no authority. That is why you were hearing them talking about this panacea called the procurement legislation. When we came in, we said this law, even though it's passed in the parliament, it has serious flaws. And we went to the parliament twice in trying to refine the law. We went twice to amend it to make it more usable and more practical. Every time we go to the parliament to do that, we are accused of watering down the law, up to the point where they accused me as Prime Minister of not wanting to have procurement legislation, as if we don't have any. We still have Centers Board actors in place. And of course, because we want to have our way in awarding contracts and whatever, all of a sudden they're concerned about awarding contracts because they expect us to behave the way they behave. So, the law, there was a clamor. Procure. proclaim the law, proclaim the law, proclaim the law. I am in the parliament telling the cabinet, let us proceed. At one point I gave March of the year as to when it was going to be proclaimed. We still couldn't get it to a point where we think it was workable. But in the end, I could tell you in response largely to public public demand, we said we'll proclaim it. But we know that we have to come back to the parliament to make certain adjustments. One of the adjustments we have to make, which come up to us starkly now, the law is proclaimed, the law is in place. You cannot now do any business with anybody inside of 2 months, in most cases. Because if you want to do any business with big, medium, or small contractor, you have to go out to tender, either sole or selective or open, and then you have to wait for a month for people to respond. And then you have to go through 2 processes of evaluation and, what's the other one? And advisory committee. And that does not distinguish between a bale of toilet paper, a case of water, and a highway. Now, fellow citizens, surely that is not the law that we really want. The other day, we wanted to buy a couple dozen flowers like that from a company to put in front of the diplomatic center to prepare it for our guests. You cannot do that because the process doesn't allow you to do it within 2 to 3 weeks. And of course, the person you want it from, like most small business and many medium business, in the period have not been registered. Today, the law is, unless you are registered with the procurement depository, and unless you have your tax certificate up to date, you cannot do business with the state, including your NIS certificate, which expires in 30 days, of course. But the procedure is about 50 or 60 days. So even if I just start out with a certificate from NIS that is good, it expires before the end of the tender period. Now, what kind of situation is that? We have to come back to the parliament to amend it. In the meantime, there's a clause in the law that says that in situations like where exigencies demand that you act, but you don't have that time period to do what you need to do, like when the water pipe broke the other night up the road, the Minister of Finance could grant an exemption to allow you to do it. Now, that is the law. But the law has another part that says, if you want to grant that exemption, you have to come to the parliament for it to be debated and voted upon. So I discovered that the toilet had no paper. And we need a bale of paper. It's a big ministry. And of course, it will take 2 months for that contract to be awarded. But in the meantime, in the 2 months period, I presume you could bring a roll of paper from home. But that is only toilet paper. There are other things you can't bring from home. And the bottom line is, the opposition is saying that the Minister of Government, who got his job by swearing to an oath of office and being elected by Diego Martin, Northeast, and the country to represent you, is not good enough to represent you to buy a bale of toilet paper because he's a thief and he must go through this process of 2 months to acquire it. Understand that? But they very well know what they're doing, you know. They know if we do not amend the law to fix that and to put sensible arrangements in place, it will grind the government to a halt. They know that. And that is what they want. But I can say to Trinidad and Tobago today, I have sworn an oath of office to act without fear or favor, without malice or ill will, and to uphold the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. And where the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago are involved, it is that oath that controls my conduct. You know, here the opposition leader is going to lead the charge because there's an error in the law, and they're going to go to court because they love the courthouse, eh? They're going to the court because this error in the law has caused the Minister of Finance to use the law. Hear it, eh? Error in the law caused the Minister of Finance to use the law to give an exemption so that goods and services could have been procured in time for the handling of our recent developments here at CARICOM. Understand? So we want to get some hotel rooms. You need 2 months of head time for that. And we should have known that we need it because it's 50th anniversary, so we had 50 years to prepare. That is the kind of nonsense that passes in this country. And of course, if the opinion is from one lawyer that it is doable, and from another lawyer that is an error, and you want to go to the court for the court to clarify it, no problem, we are a civilized country, the court will rule. But in the meantime, the government has sought advice and deeper advice. And that arrangement cannot be allowed to stand because the government will not be able to function. Because what happened in the parliament is that those kinds of situations where under normal circumstances a permanent secretary with $1 million limit as to what they could approve would have handled all those things. Now, you want to buy some doubles for lunch, you want to buy toilet paper, you want to fix a WASA 24-inch main, is the same process. And of course, because in the parliament, in seeking to go that way, the law was passed with something called an affirmative action is required. Meaning that it must be voted upon and carried by the majority. Now, is the majority already the government? If we're not the majority, we can't be the government. So coming to the parliament to get the majority to vote on it is just to come to parliament to waste parliament's time in most instances. If I come to parliament to talk about getting toilet paper and drinking water in a company, and the majority is going to vote for it, it's the government's majority. But you don't want to give any authority. As a matter of fact, in recent years, you have seen the trend. The minute you go to parliament with a bill, and it has any authority for a minister, that is the big point of debate. No. You can't give the minister that, you can't give the minister that, but you could give any faceless, nameless person. Any faceless, nameless person you could give the authority. But you must hold the minister accountable. Hold the government accountable. While other people have the authority. That's where we're heading. But I'm saying, not all of us are thieves and scamps. We not to wear their corn in their bushel. You have elected people to represent you. You give them authority and you hold them accountable in the normal, sensible way. So the government has realized that there is what they are now calling an error in the law. And we now realize that we have government to run in the days and weeks and months ahead. So we now know exactly what the government has to do because we are a sensible, responsible government. And as a result of that, today I have directed the leader of government business to recall the parliament on Wednesday of next week. And based on the experiences that we have had and the grinding to a halt that they intend to come in the country, it ain't gonna happen. The government will go to the parliament and we will use the majority that you gave us and we're going to make sensible amendments to the law so that the law can function in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And we are not afraid of the parliament, neither are we afraid of the courthouse. What we are afraid of is being like them. My memory reminds me of the day when we had to go to parliament in a similar way, or worse. And it wasn't to go to amend an error in the law about toilet paper and water and hotel and transportation and so on. It was to reverse Section 34. You all remember that? We had to go to Parliament, was that Saturday? A weekday. Because Section 34 was no error. It was a planned assault on our Constitution to create a loophole for criminals to escape the court. Remember that? And they led it deceptively, got it passed in the Parliament, and when there was public outcry, I led a march from downtown Port of Spain to President House. 25,000 people in that march against Section 34. They had to come to the Parliament the next day and reverse the law. So they know about emergency session. So we go in there to make sure that the law that we have passed can be worked, can be used, so that nonsensical action doesn't take place. We are expecting here, very soon, the King of the Ashanti for our emancipation. A few days later, we are expecting the Commonwealth Junior Games in Trinidad and Tobago. They are lying in wait saying they're waiting to see how the minister will abuse the law by giving exemption to people to provide goods and services to those two major events. Well, you don't have to wait long. We're going to the Parliament on Wednesday, and we'll make appropriate provision for the country to function without your foolishness. And all I'm saying is that we knew all along that this law had some places in it that required attention, and we were saying, let us fix it. We did it twice. And on every occasion, it's misrepresented to the country. Proclaim the law, proclaim the law. We proclaimed it as is where is, and this is the outcome. Well, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, which I lead, with your support, representing you, the government will fix it. The government will fix it. You see, diplomacy. They spend all the time talking about President Guaido. Today, the relationship between the United States and Trinidad and Tobago is at its strongest. Venezuela is there, our closest neighbor. We are still talking to Venezuela about our commercial expectations to access Venezuelan gas. Canada. You all remember there was a time when we could go to Canada and come back as you please? The UNC lost an election. They start to leave to go to Canada, seeking refugee status. The UNC. You all remember that? Trinidad and Tobago people, UNC supporters, go and meet Canadian lawyers and try to use Canada's refugee laws to make themselves refugees to get residential status in Canada, telling lies on this country that our police are turning a blind eye to women being raped in their communities. Remember that story? And they flooded Canada. As a result of that, the Canadians put us on visa for the first time. That was the UNC that caused that. As Prime Minister, I met with Prime Minister Trudeau 3 times on this issue. Both of us became Prime Ministers in the same quarter and met for the first time in Malta. I came in September, and he came in a few days after. We met at the heads of government meeting in Malta, in Valletta. I sat down with him, and it was the first issue we raised. We met again in Barbados. I raised it again. And as CARICOM chairman, I raised it. As a result of that, as he has promised to look at it, we are now having a bit of an opening, and requirements for visa for Canada, we got some relief right now. We got some relief. And of course, as far as they're concerned, we count for nothing. Everything collapsed. After all the attempts to undermine us, home and abroad, Trinidad and Tobago put up a candidate for the presidency of the United Nations, and the world voted unanimously for Trinidad and Tobago. There wasn't a single dissenting voice. And Ambassador Francis will now be the President of the United Nations General Assembly for the next year. And I will go to New York proudly to take my position as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago with a Trinidad and Tobago citizen in the chair as President of the United Nations General Assembly. Because we believe that we are small, but we are never to be insignificant. But these people believe that all they could do in this country is badmouth you every day from Monday to Friday, stand in the way of every action that is required, have nothing good to say about anything in this country or about anybody. But if you are doing so much better than they are, and all they could do is to lie and create lies to campaign on lies, or to denigrate people, let me remind you all, there was an election in Tobago 2 Januaries ago. Remember that election? I wasn't a candidate, but I'm leader of the PNM. The Tobago Island Council was fighting against the PDP because our PNM in Tobago is autonomous. I'm there to support them. I represent the PNM leadership. The Monday before election Monday, the UNC, as bedmates of the PDP, decided to damage me because that will somehow influence the voting in Tobago. On the weekend before the election weekend, the same little one from Bisawa, you see his work? He and the UNC decided to raise a scandal because they need a scandal, right? Every time we go into an election, they can't campaign on the issues of governance. They can't campaign on the integrity of the government. They can't campaign on the suitability of the PNM as the best option for the country. So they're looking for a scandal. 2015, it was me and my father's name that they bring to the parliament to accuse me of rape. Remember that story? Kamla Prasad Bisesa. That THA election, they went to the public record and discovered that my wife and I bought a townhouse in Tobago. They created their own scandal. They call it Inez Gate. Remember that? I, out of my own personal savings with my wife, dealing with a seller, bought a unit for 1.2 million. The UNC equating bought and thief, thinking it's the same thing. And they wrote and moved the Integrity Commission to put me under investigation. And from then till last week, I am under all kind of investigation. The Integrity Commission gave me letter, gave me deadline to respond and all of that. And they're on platform, Kamla Prasad Bisesa and Saddam Hussein, trying to give you the impression that I have some scandal to account for and they're behind me with this matter. Well, I'm pleased to announce to you tonight, right, that after all the wasting of time by the Integrity Commission, Saddam and the UNC, the Integrity Commission has finally come to their senses and have written to me telling me that they no longer have any interest in the matter. But it served its purpose. The lie served its purpose. Because election week, they pretended that there was some scandal involving me. And that is their habit. That is their habit. They count for nothing, they want nothing, they offer you nothing, but they want office in this country. But tonight, on a PNM platform, I could tell you, we could contest every election, any election, in any part of this country on our policies, our programs, our record, and our history. And it is because of the things that we, the PNM, do, that you evade all the hardships that they predict for you. Life is not a bed of roses, but we can certainly reduce the thorns in the garden of life for you here in Trinidad and Tobago. Whether it is in education, in health, in the economy, in foreign policy, in energy, it is the PNM that looks out for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And on this season, with or without them, As long as you vote for the PNM, there will be local government reform. Because we know if we have to rely on them, there's no support to be had. We have to go it alone. And this is not a road that the PNM has not already walked. We walked alone with Unit Trust. We walked alone with FCB. We walked alone with NIB. We walked alone with free secondary education. We walked alone with PAYE. We walked alone with the Caribbean Nation Federation. And I'm telling you, if we have to walk alone, as long as you are walking with us, we will win because we are the PNM. So tonight, I want to say to all the people of Trinidad and Tobago, this is local government time. Local government. You ain't going to vote to move no government. The general elections are due, and I have not called them yet. And I have no intention of calling it before it is due. But you are required to go to the polls and defend the work that has been done over the years, defend the prospect that is held out to you now, that we can do better in our communities, we can accept responsibility in our boroughs and our cities, we can manage our affairs. Nobody in Port of Spain should have to be talking about what to do with a drain in Maruga. And I'll tell you one thing for sure. As you give us the corporations, nobody in a PNM corporation would dare be there as a candidate, far less to hold office while they've been charged for bribery. None. So tonight I want to ask those of you who pay attention to the progress of your country, pay attention to what is on offer, pay attention to who, there's a blue tongue menace around the place. Just ignore them. Just ignore them. They have nothing useful to offer. Would you believe a party is formed? So they form party, free country. Blue tongue going on in Bitam. You know what he's campaigning on? You would not believe this. He is campaigning on the fact that he is down in Bitam talking. And the Prime Minister does play golf. You all see any sense in that? The fact that I play golf is the campaign issue for the Blue Tongue Party. And as for the other one, the less said, the better. You know, long time we used to have this carnival time, we used to play mask with mask face. Some of you too young to know that. You buy a mask face and you put it on. And little children should run behind and say, Master, I know you. Master, I know you. UNC, we know you. We don't want you. We want the people's national movement. So from this week, Saturday night we're in San Fernando. We will paint Sando red. And we move on to Siparia. We move on to Point Fortin. We move on to Diego Martin. We move on to San Grande. And when we do that, we intend to bring benefits to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Because we know that great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM, and we shall prevail.
Somebody touch me.